Hello there, outliers. Niiamah Shang here, and thank you so much for letting us be a part of your journey. Oh, today we have a chance to speak with three incredible outliers to have them share their experiences about how they keep leveling up, not just moving forward, but changing and stepping up their game, both as leaders, as entrepreneurs, and as people who are making their difference out in the world. Let's give you a chance to get to know each of these outliers now. Agon, why don't we start with you and then we'll go to Delaney.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Agon, and I'm 32 years old. I live in Auckland, New Zealand. And my desire to help people really came out of the trials and tribulations of my own personal life. And I just sort of realized that I didn't have the tools necessary to deal with the difficulties of my own life. And so that sort of really propelled me forward into trying to figure out the tools to help myself. And when I sort of figured that out for myself, I was just like, hey, I'd love to share this with other people. And that really just became the precipice to starting this journey, I would say about 3 or 4 years ago.
Nice. Thank you. Do you have a business, Agon?
I have three businesses.
Yeah.
So one is Agon Dawn Mind Guide. One is a gardening business, and I trade financial markets as well. So I do three
Oh,
things.
oh yes, you get your hands in a couple of different pockets here. You sound I bet there's some outliers out here that's like, yeah, not really like I'm a master of all of these things, right? So we'll play in and see how you leverage that, how you make your choices, and how you spend your time being able to create value in all of them. All right. Awesome. Delaney, why don't you let us know about you and the game that you're currently playing?
I like the way you phrased that question. So my name's Delaney. I am 23. I live in Montreal, Canada. I am a journalist by profession. So I don't know how well everyone knows Canada's dark side of the history. I work on the Indigenous Reserve in Canada. Um, which has been a really cool experience, like being able to amplify Indigenous voices and everything like that has been really cool. And how you kind of found me was through my podcast that I've kind of been on the back burner lately, but is it was talking about all things sexual health and feminism and everything in between, mental health. And so, yeah, I just like to advocate for inclusivity and to make sure everyone understands their value.
Well, I am really grateful that you showed up there and yeah, and that you keep finding ways to both increase inclusivity and also just like show up in your leadership here. Thank you for what you do. I'm excited to explore more about that and also some of the places where it gets rough, where it gets harder to do. Because it like I get a very bright energy from you. And at the same time, you also said like you brought in like, hey, you may not know about like the darker side of things. So let's go and play around with it and see where things go. I appreciate you, Delaney. All right, Kaden, help us get to know you and let us know about the game that you're playing right now.
Hello, I'm Kaden. The game I'm playing is creating. I have a Spotify podcast called Cosmic Vibes and a YouTube channel as well. And on there, I just share my story. I've been on a roller coaster in this life, been really down low sometimes, and learned a lot having to dig my way out of that. And just learning how to survive and how to come out of the survival mode and how to step up and level up into a way that allows me to thrive in life. And when you get to that point, you really just want to tell everyone and be like, yo, you can live this way. Like, we don't have to keep just surviving. We can co-create this life. And so that's what I share on my podcast.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and build off on this here. Uh, Kaden, both of you and Nagan were talking about like when you found the tools, when you've lived this way, you just want to go and share that with everyone. So, um, I think I want to just start off here for any outlier that's like close, that they're on their journey and they're thinking to themselves like there's something to go and share, whether it's through a podcast, through their business, or through the way that they change the teams and the way that they lead in there. I'm curious. I'll start off with Agon, then I'll go to you, Delaney, then I'll go to you, Caden. Um, like for anyone, like tell me about the time when you knew that you no longer wanted to wait for someone else to share the tools, but you wanted to be a contributing like factor in it all. I got one. Start with you.
I can't say that's a particular moment, but what I did realize was that I really like talking, communicating, and sharing. So the experience of being here, communicating with another person, that to me is sort of the reward of what I'm doing. So because I realized that was fun, then I realized, oh, then I would like to make a sort of vocation out of being able to communicate with other people about the things I care about. So it's more or less about like, when's this moment that transitions to that part of life, more so that I was always doing that. I just like communicating about the things I care about. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Delaney, I'm going to come to you in a bit, but like, how are you leveraging this? Because I know you have multiple businesses here. How are you leveraging the talking, communicating, and sharing, and using it in a way that like supports the businesses that you run? I also just knocked over a whole lot of water, so if you hear that, like, that was what took place there.
Yeah. I think I have some natural aptitude. So aptitude would be something you're naturally gifted at. And then I think I have things I've worked on over the years. So the aptitudes that come to me naturally are that I can see into people's vulnerabilities quite easily, not as a tool to do anything with them, but just as somebody communicates with me, it just comes to me. It just sort of underneath what they're communicating about or what they're saying to me, beneath that, I can just see what's really going on emotionally for them. So that's an aptitude I have. And then because I love to communicate with people, I love to learn about who they are and what they're doing. Now, that is sort of a function of who I am as a person. So then how does that translate into four or to three different areas of business? So the gardening business that I have didn't start out of like a dream. It just started out of a necessity to earn income, right? But gardening is a very simple business and it's a hard laborer's job. But my ability to just communicate with people, everyday people, some are Indian, some are Chinese, some have got cultural backgrounds, some live, have a lot of money in their lives, some people don't. So you're going to keep running into different people in different sort of levels, and each require a different way to communicate with them to get whatever it is that they want done. So some people are trying to work on their homes to build a garden. Some people are trying to just have their grass mowed. Some people are trying to work with hedges. People have different price points, pain points financially. How do you communicate with them to do all those things? So I think those natural aptitudes that I have make that process of communicating with people for that business very easy. How does that then bleed into trading markets and into coaching? For me, again, the vulnerability part is more pattern recognition in other human beings. So when it comes to trading financial markets, people see, I hope I don't lose anybody here when I talk about this part, but people see when they trade financial markets, they see assets and they see value. So they see like the price of a home, or they see the price of a stock, or they see the price of a whatever it might be. But to me, what I'm really seeing is patterns in human behavior and decision making, right? So people are buying assets based on value. So they buy things that they think they can make money on. So if you just look at data in terms of how people behave in financial markets, you're again just looking at pattern behavior and pattern recognition, right? So you don't have to get lost in the weeds of finance exactly. So that's no different than when I communicate with a person who's in a gardening or in my gardening business. Again, I'm just looking at the patterns they're creating. Like are they uncomfortable to talk about price in person? Would they be more comfortable if I did it over email for them? Or like, are they trying to ask for me to do some extra work because maybe they're struggling financially, so maybe I can help them there? So I'm constantly looking at pattern recognition in the situations I have in my life. And trading financial markets is no different. So I look for pattern recognition in those areas as well. And I guess coaching really would just summarize the points I just made, which would be that when someone comes to me and they're dealing with something very uncomfortable or something that's very frustrating in their life, again, I'm just looking beyond their words to see what patterns do they exist inside of.
Yeah.
They may be saying different things like my mom, my job, my career, my health, but I just see the same pattern in all those different areas. And so that's what I'm really looking for.
So this, like, I really appreciate Agon, like that you said this one of the reasons because you're the first person that's like articulated something that like that feels really true for me too, right? I was just talking to some people the other day, and I was like, I'm a synthesizer, right? And so what I hear about you is that like you're able to take in great data, and look at various things and understand like the patterns or maybe the systems that people like use to create what it is, and then you recognize the pattern, and then you articulate the pattern in a way that helps them either helps them to navigate through it, or in the recognition of that, you modify how you interact with them to help them be able to get to a successful element. And what I'm hearing here as like at the core, you're a pattern recognizer, and like because it's coming at your core, you're like, I can use this same core skill in many different ways. Whether I'm doing the gardening, whether I'm doing coaching, whether I'm doing like financial markets, I'm ever really doing is taking in data and like understanding what makes people tick, and then like seeing the patterns of it and choosing to do the best good that I can given the situation that I'm in. Let me check in here. That's part of what I think I heard from you. Does that sound accurate? Does that sound like a fair representation?
Yeah, 100%. That's pretty on point for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. I'm glad we brought that in here to start out with, because it's like outliers. I want you to think about this for yourself. I love these core elements, right? And this Delaney, Kaden, I'm gonna invite you all to think about it as well. Where it's like, what's something about you that is core that like no matter what you do on the surface, it looks like they're three completely different things, or that you're doing something completely different and everything. But at its core, you're only ever doing the same thing. For me, it's bringing people together. But like I'm when I'm coaching, I'm bringing them together back to themselves and helping to get these fragmented parts of them into one cohesive element, right? Play with that there, because it looks like, and this is, I think this is how we as outliers are able to get past that dreaded, like choose to be what is it, a master of all trades, but a jack of all trades, master of none. I'm like, no, no, no. We actually still are masters of one. It's just that what we do is not on the surface level. It's something that's happening farther beneath the surface, and it has multiple applications. I'm gonna play with that here. Delaney, let's come to you next here. What's something that sparks from either the initial question that I asked here, or from anything that Agon has said since?
Um, I think when you were saying like what's that one thing, I think for me it would be storytelling. I feel like
Mm,
I'm a storyteller in a lot of different avenues. So like my education and my current job is a journalist. So I'm mostly taking other people's stories and putting it to either word, photography, or video. But like through my own podcast and like I've done some opinion pieces and stuff, I also get the opportunity, like even here today, like telling my own stories, whether they're stories of pain, struggle, or whatever in between. And then just like with friends and family, whatever, I feel like I can tell a good story here and there. Um, but yeah, I feel like that answered the question. I hope it did.
yeah, I think it really does. I think I'm excited to see some of the stories that you decided to share with us today. Um, let me go to Kaden too, because I just want to just see like what's in the room right now to see like what that strength happens to be, what that through line has to be. I really like you're like no matter what I'm doing, I'm always doing the same thing. We have Delaney, you're amazing at telling stories, and you found various ways to go about doing it. Kaden, how about you? What would you say is that through line for you?
I think showing up like as my authentic self, because I've made a lot of against the grain choices in my life, and those choices I feel like could be seen as very different to other people. So I feel like it's always kind of keeping it fresh with people and showing how you can really
Um,
choose. Sorry.
get get Kaden, please.
Okay. You were frozen for a second there.
Yeah, I decided to play that Frozen game for a little bit. But you're saying like keeping things fresh.
Yeah, just being my authentic self and telling what I've been through, because we all make mistakes, but I think it's important, especially as someone who is speaking up to other people and sharing things, to share your mistakes and what you've been through, and just to be authentic in all you do. So, I don't know, kind of like that. And also just, I feel like that helps people when they're in low spaces, if you share with them that you've been there as well and what you've learned to get out of it.
Lovely. Like I appreciate y'all here. And you talk about being in like low places and sharing from that perspective. I'm going to start off with Delaney now on this one, because something that struck me as I'm getting to know you is like your disposition is something that like comes through as like very like cheerful, right? But I feel like you use that almost to your advantage in some way because like you're able to tell stories that aren't just the cheerful ones, right? The first thing you said was pain. Like it's really cool being in space with you because I feel like you subvert like norms or what people might think, even though like you yourself come through with like a positive, very like a very positive light here. I'd love for you to speak to that. 'Cause I feel that I want to make sure I'm seeing you fully, and I don't want to like have any kind of like um any kind of notions on it. But I find it to be super fascinating that you constantly lead with the most challenging parts. And I'm wondering if there's something about you that makes it like easier or disarming or anything that gives you a perspective to tell a story that most people wouldn't tell or most people wouldn't be ready to hear.
That's a good question. Thank you. I appreciate that. So kind of like what got me into journalism and seeing things kind of like how you were saying earlier of like, you can picture your life and it's almost like on train tracks and you're going the same way as everyone else. And then there's an incident and you're going on a different path. So for me, I was 13 when my sister passed away. She died suddenly. And then you kind of start seeing the world differently when you lose a sibling very young. She was 17. Um, in a sense, you also lose your parents because they are no longer the people that raised you, right? And I grew up in a very like Canadian, like typical like experience, I guess, like average Canadian life. Um, and with granted like a lot of privileges. So once that kind of happened, I definitely started to see the world differently and I just became a bit more relatable. I felt like when you experience like depression and just things and kind of people would view me as like, oh, Princess Delaney until that happened. And they were like, oh shit, like this girl has like seen some things. So then I kind of just like chose to use my voice to connect with people. So like now when I'm speaking, like having to interview people and stuff, like often it's about pretty hard topics because for those listening who aren't from Canada or the States, they might not be aware. I mean, the history of Indigenous people pretty much everywhere can be a pretty tragic history. In Canada, the residential school system was absolutely terrible. And Canada likes to paint themselves as like this country that does nothing wrong, but that has not been the case. There's been extreme cases of systematic racism. And so a lot of conversations I host are pretty in depth about generational trauma and everything like that in between. So I mean, I guess I kind of you have to approach that with an openness and a vulnerability and just like presentness. I hope that answered the question properly. I feel like
Uh,
I'm always on the other end of it,
yeah.
asking people questions. So this is kind of a funny thing because I'm like, I really hope I'm answering them right. Because sometimes I ask people questions and I'm like, huh, their answer was not what I asked. But all
Yeah.
right.
Uh, let's do this here. We'll play this game here. There is no right or wrong in this space.
Okay.
There is no right or wrong in this space here. I don't know if I asked the question right, y'all. Like, like I'm just a guy who hit record one day and then just kept hitting record, you know? Like that's basically it. I'm with a professional journalist over here, and I'm like, I'll be the one asking the questions today. Thank you very much. But I like to play with that here and call that in. There is no right or wrong. Um, I'm just fascinated by each of you, fascinated by the way that you think and that you've chosen to show up in a world of billions of people. Not everyone shows up to share their voice, to create a platform, and to help people like move forward and find deeper connections with themselves and the world that they're in. So there's a lot that comes up for me here. All right. We'll just play the game. And whatever you say is exactly the right answer or the wrong one. Either one, we're fine. All right.
Okay.
Awesome. Kaden, anything you want to say around like around this year? Like, I think the original question was something along the lines of like sharing in the space of going to places that are maybe a little more tougher or more difficult to speak to and sharing from there. And then Agon, if there's anything for you afterwards, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think it's very important, especially like I suffered a lot of mental health things when I was young, depression, anxiety, and I feel like those are important topics to talk about, especially now that they're getting like mainstream. And you're like, people are like, oh my God, I was so depressed today. And it's just becoming very normalized, which I feel like was pushed because people wanted it to be seen. And now it's getting, I don't know, that's a whole topic. But I
Mhm.
think it's important to talk about those things and like addiction as well. I struggled with that for years. And it's so important to talk about it because it's another thing that's normalized um, in the world today, is just especially to younger kids, like in high school, just doing the party scene. It's like so normalized and so seen as okay, but it's so harmful. And I feel like you don't really understand that until you hear from people that have been in that, experienced it, thought it was cool too, and then got out of it because it took them too far. So for me, it's really important for me to share that with people and to just show them that you can overcome it and that it's like it's not normal to do that all the time.
I appreciate you, Kaden. Uh, Agan, I'm curious for you. I know that like both in terms of message, like a larger message. I'm curious any thoughts you have around like sharing the more difficult things, but I also get that you see people, you recognize the patterns, and especially if I've met some pattern recognizers, you often probably see the things that most people don't want you to see. And so I'm really curious about how you speak into that and how you create space for that and such as well for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody wants to hear or confront parts of themselves that they're not ready to. And so, although I can see something in somebody, it isn't my choice to bring it up to the surface. So, a lot of times when I work with somebody, although I can see what's going on, it isn't for me to decide that, oh, right now is the time for you to heal. Oh, right now is the time for me to say something. It's about constantly, like an oscillator, it's you're constantly gauging where are the boundaries of their egoic mind that's protecting them. And then beyond that is the unconscious mind where everything kind of goes out of control, where they'll put up the walls or put up the shields or put up all these barriers that actually stop the very process you're trying to incur in that moment. So when someone shows up and says, hey, look, I've really got this problem at work with my boss, although I may see the pattern that in the moment right now, the relationship is arising as a consequence of them and their boss, it's really to do with the relationship between them and their father or them and their mother or them and someone from the past. It isn't to me to then be like, hey, look, forget your boss. We're going to go to the core here. It's just like, if they're not ready to do that and if they're not in a space safe enough to experience something like that, it isn't me to sort of do that. So kind of to your point about recognizing patterns and going to those dark places, it isn't necessarily for me to do that. My gift is mine and I get to enjoy that. And when the time is right for other people, I will share it with them based on where they are, not based on where I want them to be or where I want to be for myself. So when it comes to the sort of dark stuff in terms of coaching and working with people, it's really more about them. I'm just holding a space for them so they can experience those dark stuff if they're willing to go in that direction. And if they're not, that's okay. And if they are, then fantastic. Let's go for it.
There's something that like made me like my spine stand up a little bit straighter, and he said, "My gift is mine. My gift is mine." And I always respond to ownership. That's something that's really big for me. Where I look at this and say, how can you continue to own who you are, what it is that you bring to the table, and to continue to leverage that as it goes along? right? So if you wouldn't mind sharing here, and this year is all done in like to give outliers who are listening and watching an opportunity to reflect on some element of this for themselves. So outliers, if you haven't thought about it yet, like what's that thing that you do that's core to you, that like no matter what you're up to, you keep coming back to, or it's like it's underneath the surface of everything that you do, right? And how do you leverage it? How could you be leveraging that even more for a problem that you're facing? Or to this point of ownership, my gift is mine. Like, in what places are you not owning it yet? And how would that change things for you if you did? Right. So we're gonna have this conversation, and I hope you three don't mind. As much as it's for outliers, it's for you, and I know I'm going through a growth journey as this goes along too. Here, I appreciate you all for what you do and what you bring. One of the questions I enjoy hearing the answer to, so I keep asking it, is around like the components of leveling up, right? And so like playing a big game, leveling up, like all those things mean different things to people. But generally speaking, I think we have the general sense of like it isn't about doing more of what we're doing, but it's about taking on a fundamentally like different challenge. And so one of my questions for you, let's start off with Caden this time around. I'd like to go into a belief that you had that maybe worked for most other people, but it was something that you needed to up level for yourself in order to actually play at the level you wanted to play at. Does that make sense? When I say the word level a few different times, I was like, I'm like, is the question so clear? So what's a belief that you had to upgrade or level up in order for you to play as big of a game as you wanted to play?
It's a good question. Um, Trying to think of an exact example. Because a couple years ago, I went through a big journey where I joined this YouTuber, Aaron Dowdy, his course, and it was all about looking at the stories that we told ourselves and figuring out the beliefs that we had. And I feel like a lot of the stories I was telling myself were looking outside of me for guidance, for validation, for approval, and just looking outside of me to figure out what I needed to do with the life I was living. And so I feel like those beliefs, changing that and realizing that it was up to me and figuring out what I actually wanted to do moment to moment changed everything and really like leveled me up. And I had a phase where I really thought we were in a matrix, like a simulation, and who knows. But so I love the term leveling up because I can really relate to viewing life as a simulation because I played a lot of video games. And so to like think of like God or source or whatever as like the thing that the program, the code that created the life. And so we are from that. So then we can level up. We are characters in the life so that we can go on this journey and go to different pathways and learn different things that unlock different things in our minds that lift us to a different level of gameplay. Like if you're down here thinking you're a victim to your life and you're looking outside of you, you don't have much control of where your character's going. But if you change that and go inward and really like believe in yourself and believe that you can be like, what do I want to do? Oh, I want to do this instead of looking to what everyone else is doing. You're living on a different level and you're able to make different decisions and go different places. Like you have a wider map because you're leveling up. So now you unlock this corner of the map and this corner of the map instead of being so trapped in what you think there is. I went all over the place, but
No, I followed it. Like real quick here, just Delaney Agon, like for you following that
Oh yeah,
response.
I
Yeah,
totally, I
yeah,
got your way.
yeah. Okay, so I like the reason I'm asking this right now in real time is just so that you have that like knowing that like
yeah,
what you say makes sense. Like we
yeah.
get
The
it. Like
the train of thought just ended, and I was like, wait, what?
yeah, no, what you say makes sense. What you say makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh Delaney, let me come to you. Like and y'all always have the opportunity to answer a different question that than I put out if there's something that like needs to be continued from something we had said earlier. All right. Sometimes I'm still learning how do I want to gauge that in this type of environment. But the question on the table here is around a belief that you had to up level within yourself in order to show up and play the game as big as you wanted to play. What's something that happened and the belief that lines up?
I think something, maybe it's like reoccurring for me, and like being in systems, like I just graduated university, and like kind of a big belief is like recognizing that I'm smart. I think in school systems, it's really easy to feel like, so there's someone always better. Like comparing yourself is such an ugly disease to have, because the world is wide, and there, if you look for someone who's going to do exactly what you're doing and maybe possibly better, you'll probably find it. Like, but recognizing your own value and where you shine is really important. So I think that there's been several times in my life where I felt like, am I good enough? And I'm sure we all have been there. But so when I first like really found like my passion was when I moved to university, and I like started the journalism program here in Montreal. And I was like, oh shit, I'm kind of good at this. And then like I'm many students, like I kind of fluctuated of like going through some mental health journeys, and I went through university during the pandemic. So that added some challenges to pursuing my career. And so I was struggling with my mental health, and then I ended up in this course that really reminded me like why I went into journalism in the first place. That was to empower people and to share stories about struggle, and to get other people out there. So I took this course. It was inclusive journalism, and so we worked really closely with the Indigenous community. And I was like, oh yeah, that's why I went into journalism, to help people. And oh shit, like I'm good at this. Like I feel like I'm a pretty open person. Like I like I will tell anyone anything until you give me a reason not to. Then I'm like, oh shit, should I not share that? Like, was that TMI? But like, no question for me is off the table. So kind of leading with that openness fosters a lot of trust, and I think that that's kind of my superpower, which I've had to learn and really hone in on, and just remember that everyone has a superpower, and that you are indeed good enough.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, Agon, I'm going to come to you in just a second, but you brought up this superpower, and I do believe that like we're peeling out different areas. Like, it's cool. I got a chance to see y'all through your strength and through how you show up. So, thank you for that. And outliers are listening to this here, and they have superpowers too, right? The thing that's interesting is like tapping into it. Right? It's almost as if like you've always had a strength, and then it wasn't until it became revealed to you a little bit later on. So going back with that theme of like ownership, uh, how did you how did you shift and start to apply it in a way that's like more proactive versus reactive? Like I think you're like, oh shit, like oh, like this was it almost feels like you stumbled upon it, compared to like where I get from you a sense now where it's like, oh no, like I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing it. I'm good at this. Can you talk a little bit about that shift? Because I'd love for outliers to own more of their own superpowers and to lead with it in a meaningful way.
Yeah. So I was in a like this was my last semester of university, and I was that's for I mean a lot of people a pretty anxious time of like, wait, what's next with me? I've always been in these systems, right? Like high school to then, at least from my experience, I can't speak for everyone. It just was a natural progression to okay, then you go to uni. And so I was super anxious all year of like, what am I gonna do with my life? Like, how do I get to where I want to go, and where the fuck do I want to go? Um, so I really took a liking to this course, and I think my like biggest advice to my younger self would be to like really, or to students particularly, would be like to follow what if your profs say apply to this job, they're not telling you it for no reason. So my professor was like, hey, Delaney, like I think you would really excel at this. And I was pretty anxious to even apply because I wondered if I was going to be good enough or qualified enough. And I applied and I got the job. And then I really just dove in like fully into it, and just was like, okay, this is my everything. And then like it kind of came from there. So I guess believing in yourself and really like pushing yourself to do things and say yes. Like kind of why I joined this podcast. I was like, yes, I need to just saying yes is such a powerful three letters.
Love it. I love it. Thank you, Delaney. Um, because I'm going around today, it looks like I'm doing it. I want to come to you real quick. Um, Firstly, I am deeply curious about like anything that you're seeing in this conversation. One of the things I think I get from you is that you notice, you see, but you're also willing to wait for the invitation. And so like this is my invitation for you. If there's a pattern that you're seeing, if there's something that you feel like would be fun to like put into the mix, whether as a question or whether or just something that like you get about me, or if anyone else here is open enough to like hear you reflect something back to. I'm seeing Kaden like nodding here. There's a part of me is like, oh, there's a superpower in the room. I would love to like create some space for that to play out. Don't feel like you need to. It is, but it is an invitation, and I got the sense that you're like, I'm down to meet an invitation. I'm just not going to put it out there earlier. So let me check. Is there anything that feels like it's um, that it wants to be expressed? Please don't fabricate anything. I'm not trying to put you on the spot or, or anything like that. But is there anything that you feel like would be lovely to express right now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, right off the bat, like with Delaney talking and Kaden, like I would say we probably look very different. We probably sound very different, but we're all really much saying the same thing underneath what's going on. Like in our own ways and journeys, we've all just talked about how we've gone through our trials and tribulations and struggles. And we've talked about even common emotions, things like depression, things like anxiety, or even things like, oh, well, you know what, there was a point in my life where I didn't know what to do. What was the right choice? What was the right path, you know? And so we kind of saying the same thing in sort of different ways and vectors. And the way in which that vector arises has to do with our specific personal experience. Like, for example, Delaney, she's a decade younger than I am. She's gone to university. She's also lives in Canada. You know, Kaden, very different experience. Sorry, Kaden, I don't remember how old you are, but you know, met someone on YouTube, took a course that really opened them up to a different sort of experience of life. You know, my experience is slightly different. You know, I didn't go to university, but I went to high school, and from there, I just straight away traveled the world. And so it's just everyone's kind of taken a different route, but the internal human experience is actually very much the same. You know, and although we're being asked the questions in a way, I can imagine that actually maybe you are on the other sort of spectrum of you've gone through the experiences of asking those questions to yourself, and that's what's led you to running a podcast now. So we're very much actually sort of in the same space and moving constantly in different directions, depending on where we are in our own specific time cycle. But we're actually kind of all doing the same thing in different ways.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Um, y'all, I'm just gonna keep playing with it because I like what you're saying. Just a quick show of hands. How much does that resonate, real quick, for everyone here? Yeah, I'm seeing hands all around in this space here. Yeah, like look, I'm an outlier myself. I and it's a term I made up, you know, but like I'm on this journey with you all. And you're right. Like the questions I ask are questions that either I have gone through that relate specifically to the clients that I have, and the clients that I have come to me because they're things that like, you know, out of all the things that I could talk about, I talk about the things that I do talk about, and that resonates with people or not, right? Um, I think there's an element of that. And so there is a question that keeps flowing through me, and it's something that I'm trying to like really navigate. So I'll bring it into this space here and see what you all think, because we're approaching here. The question becomes like it's almost I heard the story about like now that you've had this experience, now that you have these skills, these gifts, what do you want to do with it? And so I'm curious about like the like how far can you take who you are? You know, how far can you take your Agon? I saw you smile a little bit. I'm curious about like what came to your mind when that came up, and I'll see where things go from there.
Till death do me part.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I kind of that thought came to mind because I've often thought about that. Like, if you think about the journey of as I experience life, I keep sort of discovering more and more about myself. Okay, so
Yes.
when does that journey end? Well, it ends when you die. So you don't know who you really are until you're dead. Because if wherever you're going and learning about yourself, the only way you stop learning about yourself if you stop having new experiences. So you sort of sit in the same place or in the same vector. But if you keep having new experiences, then who you really are keeps evolving. And so that process only stops when you're at your deathbed. And so I guess when you're on your deathbed, now you can say, well, this is who I am, because that's who you've experienced and explored. So like as you're saying that, the thought just came to mind till death do me part, I guess. But yeah.
This is making me smile quite a bit here. Um, the freedom of of continuously having new experiences, like there's something in that that really throws me. I don't know, it's just really invigorated, you know. It's like who you are is the culmination of all the different experiences that you've chosen to have. And like, man, we're about to wrap up. I just look at the time here. I've been having a good time with y'all. But before I do, I want to see like Delaney, Caden, anything that you want to speak to on this last point here.
Well,
Uh,
I'll let Kaden go first.
What was the question again? Like, yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I don't even really remember the question. Uh, I, I actually don't remember the question right now. For someone listening, they remember it. Agon, do you remember the question?
I feel like it was like, how far will you go, kind of thing.
That's
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah.
just it wasn't. I just tossed it into the space. I just feel like I'm like y'all. I'm curious what y'all think. How far can you take this thing of you?
I like that question. I'm taking a business class right now, and so I've made a whole business plan, and it's been really cool to zoom out and look at the potential for my Cosmic Vibes business and just like to really zoom out and just dream big and let it grow. And then to zoom in and just be like, okay, this is what I'm doing right now, right here. Just podcasts, YouTube, you know? And like, so zooming out, it really just makes you feel so like, I want to say powerful, but sometimes my brain has like, that's too like a negative word, but it does make me feel powerful in a way of like, wow, I could do that. I could do retreats and all these healings and so many things, courses, coaching. Like there's infinite potential when you open yourself up to all the possibilities and then just zoom in and take a step and take the next step and the next step.
Awesome, Delaney. I'll leave it open to you here, and then we'll wrap up our conversation. Is there anything you want to put in on this one?
Yeah, of course. Like, I think it's an interesting concept that's been kind of present in my life recently of like, um, I feel like always working towards something is kind of, this is my first year not in school, so it's not been like, okay, after this year you go to like your next grade, and it's like, will you ever, like, I question, I'm like, will I ever be happy, like, not maybe happy isn't the right word, like settled in the spot I'm at. But then I'm like, also think if that's a good thing or not, right? Like, should I always be pushing to be better, and like there's more to learn in this world. So it's an interesting concept of what's too much, and you don't want to spread yourself too thin, but you also want to be the best person you can be. So I mean, I think the most important thing is that you can take care of yourself, and your mental health, your every health there is, and just to be happy, and whatever that journey looks like for you. If it means taking a step back from your career for a minute and exploring, traveling, or whatever your passions are, like, and finding ways to intertwine everything.
Y'all, I appreciate you. Outliers here. Like, if you've been listening to this conversation, and something in this conversation really struck you, my ask is that you go and you share it with someone else. This is a conversation unlike any that I've had here on the Outliers Ed podcast. And so, like, for me, there's something really special about this here. And I'm asking you, if you've been listening to this and there's someone special in your world that you think would really gain, someone who's like looking to bring out their superpowers or has something that they've been always doing at their core, but just can't really articulate it, like, or any other part of this conversation that resonated with you, please let that person know. Share this episode with them. You can definitely feel free to share it on like your platforms and things as well. But like, just let's make it available for the people who this really resonates with. we're going to wrap up here in the conversation. And the way that I do wrap ups is that we each go around and we share an insight that we got from this conversation. That's a takeaway. That's a lesson. That's something that we gained or how we've grown in this conversation. And you can say like, I didn't grow, like I didn't get any insights. Like that's totally fine. Like seriously, it's totally fine. And then let us know how we can like deepen our journey with you, how we can stay connected with you. All right. So Agon, why don't we start with you and then we'll go to Caden and then we'll end with Delaney.
Um, there's a few things that come to mind. One would be that it sort of touches on what I was speaking about earlier, that we may look different, but I can relate to each of you in a specific way. And that is the human part of me, and that's the human part of you. And so I quite enjoyed that. So, you know, I think the longer I would talk to any one of you, I think the more I would realize there's parts of me in all of you. So I'd sort of learn more about myself. I think that that's something I recognize. Then in terms of like what did I learn, that I'm in the right place of my journey, hearing your guys' journey and hearing where you guys are at makes me realize, oh, I actually, you know what, a lot of the negative emotions I have or a lot of the difficulties I have, actually other people are sharing them too. So actually I'm not very isolated over here, am I? So that's something that even just this 1 hour conversation just brings to light again. So now, you know, I can tell that like, as I go about my day now, I'm just gonna have like a, so to speak, like a skip to my step, because it's kind of like, oh, actually this last 1 month or 2 months that I've been going through the darkness of whatever, actually there's people constantly dealing with this stuff, you know. So it's just kind of like a reminder of that. And that was pretty cool to experience in this conversation. In terms of reaching out to me, there's only two places really. One's Instagram, and the handle is argondawn.mindguide. And the website is the same, argondawn.mindguide. If you just go into Google, you type that in, they're both the same handle. So that's the place to find me.
Thank you so much, Agon. I really, really appreciate you being here. Caden, what's an insight you got and how can we stay in the game with you?
Um, an insight would be just tapping back into my potential. I feel like I've been in hibernation for a while, coming out every once in a while, but seeing how clearly you guys are able to just share your stream of consciousness and your thoughts and tell stories, and the wisdom that you have is very inspiring and reminds me of the times that I've been very clear and in tune and able to express myself in that way. So it was very inspiring to see that and to feel that here. Um, and I can send my Instagram in the chat. I haven't posted much on there, but I have the intention to get back on there. So
Awesome, awesome. Is there anything you want to say for anyone that's listening here? Like, but like you might just send your Instagram for them because
oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Cosmic Vibes 111 is my Instagram.
Awesome, awesome. Let's stay connected there. And then Delaney, why don't you bring us home? An insight and then how to stay connected.
Yeah, I think this conversation was lovely, and it kind of, to tap on what you guys both touched on, was it's interesting how we all took very different paths through life, and yet we're all like right where we need to be. And I think that that's important for listeners too, that like to, you know, follow, you don't have to like follow what your mom is telling you to do or your dad. Like you just know, recognize within yourself what your superpower is and lean into that. And just um, success looks different on everyone. And my Instagram is delaney.kelly with two Y's at the end. And I post kind of just, I share my articles sometimes, so, and just pics of me having fun. So nothing crazy on there, but feel free to give her a follow.
I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you here. Thank you all for making the time for this. Thank you for accumulating experiences and discovering more about who you are every single day, and then coming to share some of that with us here. There's a lot that I'm taking away from this conversation. I'm sure the same for our outliers out there. And outliers, I have a reminder for you. Until the next time we speak, remember, be you on purpose. Journey on.